Now we're going to look at how to solve a sine equation. And some of you have kind of figured out already that solving a sine equation is going to be a little different than solving a cosine equation, because the graph isn't symmetric on both sides of the y-axis like the cosine graph is. So we can't just do plus and minus our principal angle. So what are we going to do for a sine function? We're going to start out looking at a particular sine function, sine of x equals 0.7. And hopefully you know by now that x is the angle and 0.7 is the trig value. So I want to find all of the angles that make the sine value equal to 0.7. So we're going to put 0.7 on the y-axis because the y-axis shows us our trig values. So that would be maybe about right here on the y-axis, 0.7, which means we'd have an angle right here. And there'd be another angle right here, and another angle right here, and another angle right here that would all have a sine value of 0.7. Now the principal angle, I'll mark that one in red, the principal angle would be that one, because that's one the closest to 0. So that's the one we're going to get on the calculator. So let's stop for a moment and see what we get on the calculator. So on the calculator, I'm going to go to my, don't want that button. I'm going to go to trig here. Don't like it when the buttons won't behave. Okay, I want to do inverse sine of 0.7. And that gives me 0.7753. Now remember we talked about before that pi over 2 is about 1.57. So this is going to be less than pi over 2. And if we go back to our graph, so let's close this down for a second, go back to our graph. We go back to our graph, we see that oh gosh, I just forgot what that value was. Let me try this again. 0.775. 0.775, actually that looks very reasonable as the x value or the angle for that trig value. So we have inverse sine of x, or inverse sine of 0.7 is equal to 0.775. That's this angle right here. Now I need to find another angle which is right here. And how are those two angles related to each other? Because if I can find these two angles, then all I have to do is subtract 2 pi from both of these two angles to get these two angles, or add 2 pi to both of these angles to get those two over here, because like the cosine graph, the sine repeats itself every 2 pi units. So I just need one on each side of the curve, and then I'm good to go to get the other angles. So how are these related? What I want you to notice is that the distance from my principal angle to 0 is the same distance as from my secondary angle to pi. This is pi right here. Let me label that. So this distance is pi. And so these two little distances, let me get another little color here. How about blue? These two distances here and here are the same. So if this distance is 0.775, this distance here is also 0.775. So I can figure out this angle by saying this is pi minus 0.775. Pi minus 0.775. Let's check that out on the calculator and on a graph. So if we go back to the calculator, let's do pi minus 0.775, and since I already have the 0.775 in here, I can just do pi minus and go up and grab that number and push enter, and there would be 2.3662. Well, we know that pi is 3.14, so that makes sense that it's less than that. Let's graph a sine function. So I'm going to open up a calculator page, and I'm going to I opened up a graphs page, silly me. I need to open a graphs page and type in y equals sine of x, and here's my sine graph. Now I'm not going to worry about window settings right now. I just want to check and see if 0.775 and pi minus 0.775 both give me the same trig value. So let's go to my menu here. I'm going to go to trace so I can type in some values. Trace, graph trace. And I go to 0.775. Okay, that gives me a y value of 0.7. Now I'm going to type in pi minus 0.775. The reason I'm going to do that is because I can't remember what's on my other screen right now. Pi minus 0.775. There we go, 2.37, also 0.7. Now if I want to find some additional angles that have 0.7, I could do my original angle, 0.775 plus 2 pi. So let me put in that 0.775 plus 2 pi. Look, there's another one with the same trig value of 0.7. And then I could do the pi minus 0.775 plus 2 pi as well. And I could keep finding other angles. So let's kind of go back and just summarize this on the notes. Now I gotta find mine. Oh yes, close this. This is a very complicated process doing this on my computer, just to have you know, be impressed. Okay, how can we find the coordinates of the other points? Well, first of all, angles that are, what angles would we call this in general? If we take pi minus an angle, if that means these two angles basically will add up to pi. What is pi in degrees? Pi is 90 in degrees. No, I'm sorry, pi is 180. So if two angles add up to 180, they're actually called supplementary angles. Angles that are supplementary. Oh well, I'm not sure how to spell that. Have the same sine value. I'm usually a really good speller, but for some reason that doesn't look right to me, but maybe it's right. Now the general solution for sine. So let's figure out the general solution here for the sine. We would say x equals the principal angle. Nope, I'm gonna scratch that. Sorry, I'm gonna write it a little bit differently. Let's say x equals the inverse sine of y plus 2 pi n. This would be the principal angle. At least this angle here is the principal angle, and then this of course would be the period. And then pi minus the inverse sine of y plus 2 pi n.